Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 18 Beta 1 has been out for a couple of weeks, and iOS 17.6 Beta 1 has been out for a few days. There's a lot more features to talk about since the iOS 18 Beta 1 is out. What's new video, we'll talk about that, and talk about the overall experience of both updates. Not just my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll, where at the time of this video, there's over 24,000 votes and 313 comments. I've read all of the comments to determine what the overall experience is like. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video and read some of your comments, but first let's talk about new features. And the main feature of iOS 18 that many people are looking forward to is Apple Intelligence. We know that will only be on the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max to start, and of course iPhone 16 models, but Apple actually explained why that is in the yearly talk show that was live at WWDC with John Gruber. He puts this on every year, and Giandrea, who actually helped develop some of the overall AI, actually said to these models, when you run them at times, it's called interference. And the interference of large language models is incredibly computationally expensive. And so it's basically a combination of bandwidth in the device, it's the size of the Apple Neural Engine, and it's the oomph in the device to actually do these models fast enough to be useful. He said you could, in theory, run these models on very old devices, but it would be so slow that it would not be useful. When John Gruber actually asked if it was a scheme to sell new iPhones, Apple's Greg Joswiak responded saying not at all. Otherwise, we would have done it on the iPads and Macs too. So it looks like it's just too slow on the older models. I'm curious to see what it's like on the latest models and if it's slow at all. There's also more news about Apple Intelligence where it's not coming to the EU when iOS 18 comes out initially. This turns out that it's due to the EU DMA laws, and it also includes screen mirroring on Mac and SharePlay screen mirroring as well, where you can share on iPad. Apple actually gave a statement to the Financial Times and said, due to the regulatory uncertainties brought about by the Digital Markets Act, we do not believe that we will be able to roll out these three new features, iPhone mirroring, SharePlay screen sharing enhancements, and Apple Intelligence, to our EU users this year. So that's a huge disappointment, but it's not on Apple. It may be due to regulatory concerns. Now, as far as new features that have been found, let's take a closer look. iOS 18 brings the ability to lock different apps using Face ID or your passcode. So I'll go ahead and hide this and lock it. And when you hide it and lock it, we'll go ahead and hide it. Now it's gone. If we go into settings and we go down to our apps, within apps, if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's actually a hidden apps section. So Apple has added a new section for this, and if we go into it, again, it checks Face ID, and then we can see the settings for the app. So there's no way to even see the app without going into the hidden app folder in the app library or in the settings itself. So that's great. If you wanted to hide an app, even the settings themselves are hidden. So again, if we go back in, scroll down, we have our hidden apps, and then we'll press, and we won't require Face ID, and we'll bring it back. Within Safari, if we go to maybe a different web page, but then we want to open up maybe another tab, if we want to create a new tab group, there's a new gesture for that. Just slide over and you can create that new tab group. So new group, and that's it. Hit done, and then you can add pages from here. Swipe back and forth to get in and out of those different groups. If you're on a web page and you tap on the options next to that web page story, you can listen to the page. It will start talking and give you the information on the page itself, and now you can swipe home. It will go into the dynamic island, and you can continue multitasking while it's reading that page to you. So press and hold, you'll see that it's reading that news story from Mac Rumors, and then you can continue or jump to the next story. So it's a great option that just goes into the dynamic island if you want to do that now. If you're on a web page and maybe you download a video, tap on that video, open it up. Once it's open, you have a little edit option in the bottom right, and you can edit the video directly from the download itself. So they've brought those same controls from photos directly into a web page. If we go into our settings and then we scroll down to accessibility, then scroll down to touch, scroll to the bottom, we have a new section called sound actions. We can make a sound to perform an action throughout the OS. You'll see I already have one set to Control Center, so let me go ahead and do that. And it opens up Control Center. So based on the sound you make, you can perform different actions. If we go in, you'll see there's a ton of different things we can do all throughout the OS. Even open a shortcut or whatever you'd like. If we go in and take a screenshot, there's an update here. Within a screenshot, if we use the markup tool and then maybe we add some text or maybe a shape, we add text, there's a new option menu above that. So you have your different text or font settings, 60 point, you can make it larger or smaller, bold the text, or even add something else directly here with another set of text, or just delete it altogether. If we go into the Photos app and go into an album, we can now just swipe back and forth to jump between those albums. So while many don't like the new Photos app, at least we have some gestures here to make it a little bit easier. If we go into cellular, if you have multiple eSIMs set up and press and hold on cellular, you'll actually have a new pop-up here when you go into your cellular data, where instead of turning it off and on, you'll have an option to switch between the different eSIMs that you have set up. So this is great if you have multiple SIM cards, you can just switch between those very easily. If we go into AirPods and bring those over here, wait for them to connect. We'll give it just a moment here. Within the AirPods menu, if we scroll down and you have the latest beta on the AirPods, you can go into adaptive audio and now control this, making less noise or have it hear more noise. So it says adaptive audio dynamically responds to your environment and cancels or allows external noise. You can customize adaptive audio to allow more or less noise. So you can change this to whatever you'd like. Within the control center, we have a lot of customization. One of the things that's a bit hilarious, I don't know if Apple will keep it, but we can have multiples of the same controller. So you'll see here, we can have our brightness and our volume. If I change the volume, give it a second, they all change. The same is true for brightness. Bring it down, bring it back up. They all change at once, and you can have multiple pages of this if you'd like. Within music, they've made some nice updates. If we're in our library and then we go to a playlist, so maybe we'll go down to, we'll just go down to this one here. Within a playlist, maybe we want to delete something, go to the menu in the upper right and tap Edit. Now we can just delete a ton of different songs at once, or multiples, whatever we want, just change them, then hit delete, use the little trash can, and you can delete them all at once if you choose to do that. If we go over to search, you'll see if we go to an album and we scroll down and it has a very long title, it actually shows the full title now instead of cutting it off. So if you have a really long title of a song, it will show that specifically without cutting it off. It just makes it a larger space now. Back within settings, if we go to our camera options and then go to record sound, there's a new option to allow audio playback. You can now play back audio as long as it's royalty free and you want to record audio while you're recording video, you can now do that. And you'll see it's very glitchy in this camera app. There's some buttons that are sort of glitching out, but it does seem to work fine when you actually have that set. Within notes, maybe we have something set up with math notes where we have a couple different values here where they equal different things. In this case, a house equals $1,000, car equals $500. You can put house plus car, then put an equal sign, and it will add them together. That's super helpful and definitely something that you can use in the future. Also, if we go into the calculator app, then we go to our history, we can see all of the different history of things we've totaled up, press and hold on that, and we can copy the expression, copy the result, or delete it. So if you want to copy just the expression, you can then of course copy and then maybe paste it back into notes and continue to use that. If you want to use it somewhere else, you can just paste the expression there. Again, go back, tap equals, and it will sum that option for you. So your equation is just summed up right there, and you have different options below. If we go over into Apple's new Passwords app, and once it verifies it's us, I have a sample password here, and if we tap Edit on this password, down at the bottom, maybe you didn't add a website that relates to a password you've created within the app. Now you can just add a website that goes along with it, and just name it whatever you'd like. Once you're done, tap return, and it will save that information for you. Within the Health app, it will now keep track of sleep like it normally does, but it will also keep track of naps throughout the day. So maybe you took a nap, you're wearing your watch, it will keep track of that on its own without enabling the sleep mode. So that's something that will just populate on its own, and based on the day, we'll keep track of it for you if you want to see that. So if you do fall asleep, it will let you know in your Health app. In the Podcasts app, if you're playing a podcast that has chapters, those chapters will now show as the title on the podcast widget on the lock screen. I wasn't able to find very many tech podcasts with titles, but it will show up at the top. Last year in accessibility, Apple allowed us to create a personal voice that sounds like us. That personal voice can now be used within VoiceOver. So if you go into VoiceOver, then you go to Speech. Under Speech, you have Primary Voice, and then we have the voice here. You'll see that I have my personal voice here. If we enable VoiceOver, then we tap on something else. We'll turn this up.
Braille. Speech. Accessibility. Button.
Voiceover. Switch button. On. Voiceover on. And now it's off, so you can hear it was using my personal voice for that. Some people did find a way to enable the new Siri. That's actually not super simple to do, but if you enable it, you'll have the new Siri on the outline of the device. It's unclear whether or not this is actually coming to older devices or not, but it looks like you can enable the new Siri look at least on those older devices with that workaround. The other day, Apple announced a new feature that looks like it's coming in iOS 17.6 that allows you to catch up to a different sports game that you're watching in Apple TV. 9to5Max at Apple announced this, and basically if you join a game that's already been live for a while, it will catch you up with different clips of that game and bring you up to speed with moments that you may have missed. So that's something that looks like it's coming very soon, if not already. Now, the other day I talked about Apple releasing a new Pro Video app that's here called Final Cut Camera. I have a separate video covering all of those new features. So Apple released that the other day, along with Final Cut Pro for iPad 2, kind of an odd name there, and Final Cut 10.8 for Mac. You can actually record up to 4 iPhone cameras at once. It's a pretty great, incredible app, and they've updated that. They've also updated the Magic Mouse to version 3.1.1, along with the Magic Trackpad to the same version. Now, it's been almost 2 weeks since we've had iOS 18 Beta 1 released to developers. I would expect Apple to release iOS 18 Beta 2 as soon as Monday, as they actually confirmed this in a statement to The Verge when they were talking about the issues of the features not coming with Apple Intelligence to the European Union. So it looks like on Monday the 24th, we'll get iOS 18 Beta 2. I would expect iOS 17.6 Beta 2 probably the following week in July. However, at the same time, I would expect iOS 18 Public Beta 1 sometime in early July as well, and usually Apple will do some sort of iOS 18 Beta 2 re-release to go along with that. We'll have to wait and see if that's exactly what they do, but then after Beta 3 or Beta 4, we switch to a weekly schedule. We can expect a public release in September, usually around the launch of the next iPhone. So iPhone 16 will launch usually in the second or third week of September, and we'll have that a little bit before. So just a few more months, we'll have a public release, but we'll have a lot of betas up until then. But it's great to know that they've confirmed iOS 18 is coming out on Monday with Beta 2. As far as the overall experience, well, iOS 17.6 Beta 1 is great according to many people running it, saying it's super stable. People have downgraded from iOS 18 to iOS 17.5.1. Then they tried 17.6 and it seemed to fix all of the issues. So it seems like it's a much better experience. In my experience, iOS 18 Beta 1 has been pretty stable as far as using it, but definitely has some bugs. It gets really hot. In fact, it's quite warm right now. We'll check that in a moment. And it's great for some, not for others. Overall connectivity seems better than iOS 17 for me. So iOS 18 connectivity seems to be much better. Really haven't had too many issues with it not working properly, with the exception of Wi-Fi dropping and then joining back on for some reason. There's definitely a lot of bugs though, things such as customizing the control center. Sometimes it just doesn't work, or you're dragging and dropping maybe icons that aren't there. The same is true for the lock screen. Screen time isn't working according to many people. Many people keep being prompted to log in to their Apple ID or Apple account or the recovery key, and there's random reboots for some. Search has been quite slow for me, whether you're looking for an app, whether that's maybe Instagram. It's working fine right now. Sometimes it's super slow and doesn't respond, or sometimes people are having huge amounts of storage being used up. So if we go back here, you'll see there was some lag there. If we go to, not software update, we go to iPhone storage, give it a moment. I'm not seeing a whole lot of use here, but some people are seeing hundreds of gigabytes of use. I typically would ignore that and just maybe reboot the device. That seems to fix a lot of these odd bugs, and occasionally it will need a reboot. When notifications come in and media is playing, many say it will reduce the volume until you pause and then unpause the video. There's also, again, still no option in Files to save a photo. There's accessibility issues where VoiceOver isn't working properly, screen recognition isn't fully working, and there's mislabeled buttons and a lot of little other small bugs here and there. However, it's much, much better than iOS 17 Beta 1 was. So I would expect Beta 2 to fix a lot of different bugs. As far as camera improvements, take a look between iOS 17.6 and iOS 18 Beta 1. Let me know if you see any differences here. There's just a few photos, but basically everything should look pretty much the same. And of course, we have that new video app, Final Cut Camera, that looks great. So I really don't have any complaints with the camera. It seems to be working as you would expect. When it comes to performance, well, there's definitely some lag here and there. 17.6 feels much more sorted out as far as that part goes. Much better overall as far as stability, I think, but it's not a major update. So just scrolling through things, whether that's ProMotion, on iOS 18, things can get a little laggy from time to time, as you've already seen. Sometimes just going into settings. So if we go in and try to scroll right away, it doesn't respond. Little bugs here and there, but again, it's not a huge issue and can be fixed most of the time just by rebooting. As far as the heat of the device, well, iOS 18 has been very warm on my device. I'll probably restart it soon. And here's 17.6 at idle. Let me show you how warm it is with a thermal camera. On iOS 18 Beta 1, we're running at about almost 98 degrees Fahrenheit, and on 17.6, about 88 degrees Fahrenheit, so a 10-degree difference. Again, on iOS 18 Beta 1, about 37 degrees Celsius compared to 17.6 that's at about 32 degrees Celsius. So a very big difference there. Of course, I've been holding on to it, but it seems to be much warmer. And there's definitely something going on in the background. Let me show you that with benchmarks. I ran it on both devices. So if we go into benchmarks here, you'll see on the left, well, it reset on iOS 18. Let's go into the history here. On the left with 17.6 Beta 1, we have 2,966 for single core, 7,247 for multi-core. On iOS 18 Beta 1, I ran it at the exact same time. We have 2,896 for single core, 6,935 for multi-core. Overall, it's okay, but there's definitely things going on in the background with iOS 18. I'm sure it's just some bugs that are early on. If you are having issues, be sure to report it in the feedback app. If we go in here to inbox, go into the notes, make sure that it's not already listed here as a known issue, and if it isn't, be sure to report it. There are quite a few known issues still going on. As far as overall battery life, well, that's been pretty horrible for me on iOS 18 Beta 1. Most people on iOS 17.6 don't report a problem, but if we go into settings, we go to battery health, I'm down to 95% with 222 cycles. Here's Coconut battery, so you can take a look and see what it says there as far as the data goes. But battery life overall has been pretty terrible. Yesterday, I had 4 hours and 21 minutes of screen active time, 5 hours and 42 minutes of screen idle time, and had to charge it toward the end of the day. Every day, typically after a regular full day, I have to charge it before I go to bed so it doesn't lose all of its battery. I'll get down to 20%, plug it in typically, and you'll see today I've had 2 hours and 40 minutes of screen active time just recording this video, and I'm down to 50%. So depending on the day, it's pretty terrible, and especially if things are going on in the background. You can see here I had Final Cut Camera on earlier when I recorded that, and it was using a lot of power. I found Photos was using power randomly, just syncing and other issues here and there. So it's definitely not great, and if you're wondering if you should install iOS 18 Beta 1, if you're anxious to try the new features, I'd probably wait until public Beta 1. Typically, Apple releases that when a lot of the major bugs are sort of fixed and ironed out. At this point, if you have a secondary device, then you can try it out, but I wouldn't recommend it on your main device. As far as what you had to say, though, let's take a look at some of your comments. Fried Chairs said, overheating is my main issue on iOS 18 with 15 Pro Max. I'm seeing screen dimming more often. Sam Sushaik, hopefully I'm saying that properly, said the main issue I'm facing with my iPhone XS and my iOS 18 is my phone randomly reboots as well as the phone turns off itself in charging state. It doesn't even charge after going down. Anyone is facing this issue? Ruben de Merez 3281 said, I was on iOS 18 but reverted to iOS 17.6. iOS 18 had terrible battery life, dropped calls, system storage took 133 to 140 gigs, and did not go down. It heated up often, and notifications were not showing up. iOS 17.6, on the other hand, this one is just perfect. Crazy battery life, finally back on iPhone 13 Pro Max levels, smooth and fast. Stacy Gray said, iOS 18 Beta 1 has been great on my 14 Pro with 89% battery health. No major issues at all, very stable, great performance, and battery life on par with 17.5.1, so no complaints. Looking forward to seeing what changes Beta 2 brings. Graham Evans, 8567 said, iPhone 15 Pro running iOS 18.1 Beta 1. I can hardly tell I am on a beta except for a screen flicker here and there, opening some third-party apps. Battery life is still on par with 17.5.1 and overall running cool, even when I installed it. 150 cycles and still 99% battery capacity. Rochester X says, I'm running the iOS 18 beta on my SE 2020. The battery life is slightly worse than iOS 17 and the new features are functional but very buggy. It took me significantly longer than it should to rearrange my control center, and both the control center and a home screen leave behind invisible versions of the apps and controls that can get in the way sometimes. Also, sometimes notifications just wake the screen but don't show up. I'll be sticking with it though, and I'm looking forward to RCS support whenever that comes out. VividR15 said, I've had an issue with 18 Beta 1 where whenever a notification sounds, it would reduce the volume of any media playing permanently until you pause and resume the media, whether you were either watching or listening to it. This would be annoying when you're away from your phone listening to music, for example. So that's everything with iOS 18 Beta 1 and iOS 17.6 Beta 1. Lots of new features, lots of changes, but definitely a lot of work still yet to be done. Let me know how your experience is in the comments below, and if you've found any other features, I'd love to hear from you there. And if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.